Is Lisa Cook related to Tim Cook? They look so similar. I'm at home with my parents for the first time in a bit, and I said I explained that I was tuning into a live reaction of Jerome Powell, and they looked at me like I grew a third head. Sit your fucking parents down and tell them to watch. Okay, this is important for the future of our economy and our nation. It's worth keeping an eye on. I'm in Australia. Why the fuck am I here? That's a better question. A much better question is why an Australian cares. Why are you tuning in to find out what's going on in American interest rate? I mean, I guess it matters, but it's still funny. Little taste of freedom. What up, Lucy Jensen? What up? Thank you for the subs, by the way. Pole. Zuko Kage, thank you for the 3 months. Shadow AJ, thank you for the 8 months. Bravo Coop, thank you for the prime. Naki Lucky, thank you for the 7 months. I got a treasure train. Oh my God. Jerome Powell, you can't cut rates. I'm getting a treasure train. Don't change anything. We are the Fed. No, we're not. We're just a bunch of people on Twitch. We're not the Fed. That's not how it works. It's not a movement. I'm a Norwegian, and Jerome Powell's my favorite American sports team. It is fun to cheer for him. He's got some fight in him, that old dog. Trump called him a numbskull. Trump called him an idiot. Trump called him too late. I called him a very stupid man, and he's still fighting. You got to respect that. They should call it a treasury train instead and let people buy T-bills. That's not a bad idea to help with the national debt, bro. They should add treasury trains to Twitch. You can help fucking buy government IOUs. Any Nepal news? Yeah, I'll give you some news. It's spelled Nepal. That's step one. Step one of the news is you got to learn how to spell it. RuPaul Nepal. We're talking about Logan Nepal. The flag looks funny. It doesn't look funny. It looks badass. The Nepal flag is like the only flag in the world that's not rectangular. They break the meta. They break the mold. Nepal's flag is 2 triangles. It's badass. More countries should have cool flags like that. Like, I don't understand why we're so limited in our flag design. This is cool as hell. This is sick AF. It's a little pick-me. Dude, calling a country's flag pick-me is very funny. It's like, oh, you think you're so special because you don't use a rectangular flag. It's like, calm down, buddy. Oh my God, EU stream, thank you, JPow. Yeah, starting here in a second. 8 minutes. All right, well, quick update. Let's just talk about it while we're waiting. Let's talk about it while we're waiting because this will be happening in 8 minutes. 8 minutes, we're going to know what the rate cut is or not rate cut. So here's the deal. Here's the tea. Here's the tea. This is happening really soon. Bada bing, bada boom. Jerome Powell, our on-again, off-again GOAT. Certainly a key figure in all of our financial lives over the past, how many years has it been? 2017, maybe? So like 8 years? I mean, it's been a while. It's been a minute that Jerome Powell's been an important figure. And certainly was a key figure in COVID during the rates to zero money printing era. But he's nearing the end of his dynasty. Jerome Powell will likely be gone by early 26. So we're running out of FOMC meetings for him to have a key impact. And this is a very important one because this is the one where he's expected to finally cut rates, as Trump has been demanding and demanding and demanding. Again, quick refresher, Trump has called him a numbskull. Trump has called him a very stupid person. Trump has called him too late Powell. And so today, in just 5 or 6 minutes probably, we're going to know whether or not they've decided to actually cut rates. Now, as a refresher, I do this every time, but it's good to have everybody caught up. If the FOMC thinks that inflation is the biggest problem, then they will want to raise rates or keep rates the same. If they think the job market declining and fewer jobs and harder to find a job, if they think that's the biggest problem, then they will lower rates. That's the idea. And the sense is that the job market is getting scarier and scarier faster than inflation is getting scary, though they both are a problem. The spooky thing is that we're kind of in a stagflationary environment where it seems like prices are going up, but also the job market's getting worse. So you don't have like an easy choice, which is why he's just been steady. He's been making no choices, really. So realistically, especially because we just had a BLS labor market revision of 1 million fewer jobs in the past year than we thought, it's likely they will cut rates today. It is funny, I gotta say, I just gotta be real. It's expected to trim borrowing rates. That we're thinking it's gonna happen. But it is funny that Trump is simultaneously saying you have to cut rates, but also the bad jobs data is a lie. The jobs are actually good. Those two things are opposite statements. The only reason Jerome Powell would have to cut rates is if the jobs data was true, and it is bad. You can't say that everything is great, but also we desperately need to cut rates. It doesn't make any sense, but that is what is happening. Okay? So Trump pressure plus the weaker labor market data means very likely that the Fed's consensus will be crashed and we will get a 0.25 rate cut today. Now, there's a couple things we should look for in Jerome Powell's press conference, which we're going to watch. We're going to watch here in a few minutes. Okay. By the way, here's our interest rates for the past, 50 years. This is the interest rates. Now, ignoring the insane time of the 80s when we got up to like 20%, let's look at like our lifetimes, okay? Your lifetimes probably start here after 9/11. But okay, let's just go like the past 30 years, okay? Couple interesting things to point out. Generally, rates climb up until something breaks. Then right when they start lowering them in a panic is when we get a recession. That happened in 2001. That happened in 2007. And now we are starting to lower rates again. Just worth noting that fact is generally right when they start cutting is right when it's already basically, too late to be a problem. Second thing worth noting is that this period where a lot of people in this chat or people watching sort of started to come of age in is a historical anomaly. After 2008, we had years of 0% interest rates, basically free money borrowing that created a very weird economy that a lot of people have come up in. And the economy has gotten very addicted twice to essentially free borrowing. And when we did this rapid rise in rates recently in like late 21, 22, people expected things to break. And they haven't super broken yet, but it's clearly seeming like they're starting to. So that's where we're at. The main things to watch for today are, this is the expected outcome. If this happens, the market will react, I guess, semi-positively, but this is what's priced in. If we see a 0.5 basis point, a jumbo rate cut, it's called a jumbo rate cut, twice as big. If this happens, it is a clear sign of panic, of like, oh shit, things are really bad. Like the job market is actually really bad. We need to get ahead of it. So if we see a jumbo rate cut, it is definitely a sign that what data the Fed is seeing is scaring them. If we see no rate cut, the market will react really bad. If we see nothing, zero, no change, then the market will freak out because they are expecting it to get easier to borrow money. This would say that the Fed is very scared about inflation. This would say that Jerome Powell has decided the risks from tariffs causing good inflation is too high. We have to keep the interest rates high to try and break the back of inflation. By the way, inflation is supposed to be at a 2% target, but we haven't gotten close to 2% yet. We're kind of bouncing around 3, and we're not close to 2. And so if we start lowering rates, we're never getting back to 2, just to be real. Okay? Now, the last thing there's no chance we're going to raise rates. I think there's almost zero chance there's going to be like a plus 0.25. If that happened, it would be Armageddon, I guess. I mean, people would freak out. It would be disastrous. So the one thing we're looking for, it's going to happen in like a minute here, is if Jerome Powell says the words mid-cycle adjustment. If Jerome Powell says that, then that means, okay, yes, we're cutting rates by 0.25, but we're probably going to stall out there. We're not going to keep cutting. This alone would freak the market out because everybody's expecting them to cut, and then at the next meeting, cut again, the next meeting, cut again. The idea is we're going to begin cutting all the way back down to zero. That is what everybody on Wall Street wants. That's what Trump wants to juice his numbers into the midterms. That's what they want. So that is what we're watching for. I think the cut today will be this, but we're kind of watching for the guidance of what's going to come next. What do they plan to do in the future? Okay. So that's the update. Now I want to talk about, we could wait here. It just happened. So we'll know in just a second. It looks like we are getting, let's see. I would like a official, breaking. The Fed has cut by 0.25. Okay? Breaking the small cut. Too late Powell has started to move. Okay? So this is the expected thing. So we're going to watch his press conference to see, first of all, what he thinks about the economy, what he thinks about inflation, and what he thinks about what they're going to do going forward. That's the main things to watch. But since we have a little bit of time until he actually does the press conference, I want to talk about some drama that's been going on with the Federal Reserve in the background. So this drama is about Federal Reserve Governor Lisa Cook. Okay? Not this Lisa Cook, this Lisa Cook. Okay? And the main story here is that, if you guys don't know how it works, the FOMC has these 12 Fed governors. They all vote to decide whether or not to cut rates. She's one of them. She's one of the votes. And Trump, in an effort to stack the FOMC with people on his side to force rates down, has been trying to get her fired so he can replace her with somebody on his side, get rid of Jerome Powell in early 26, get a majority, and then be able to lower rates at will. So he's had a bit of a power play against Jerome Powell by trying to get her fired. This is Bill Pulte. You need to know who he is because it's a big part of this story. And you may have heard me talk about Bill Pulte in a video I did about him versus Scott Bessent, where Scott Bessent said, "I'm going to punch you in your fucking face." That's Bill Pulte. Okay? There's a bit of internal drama about him and Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent. Okay? Bill Pulte, his background is he's a rich kid. He inherited a lot of money from his grandfather, the founder of home building giant Pulte Group. Okay? So he got a big inheritance and then started giving away some of it, very small amounts, on Twitter to become famous. This is where you probably heard of him. In your lifetime, he was, for most years, the guy that gave away money on social media. Okay? He would post things like this. "Good evening. This beautiful mom and daughter need a handicap accessible van but can't afford it. Can you help? I'll match donations up to $1,000. Okay. Bro, you are inheriting $1 billion fortune and you're matching $1,000. Wow, extremely generous. He would do like retweet to win giveaways, follow me to win giveaways. Okay? And then he would say things like, I'm sitting on my couch right now, thinking about how many people we've helped this year and how happy I am to be alive and living this dream. To whoever out here that needs this, don't give up. Just stupid, inane bullshit. I've done private planes and cars. I've been in the biggest meetings. I'm friends with many of the wealthiest people in the world, but nothing comes close to helping people on Twitter. Nobody, me. And it's fucking Patrick giving away money. And then he called his followers his teammates, people that just followed to win money. They're my teammates, okay? So he becomes like social media famous because of this. At one point, he wins the award for Twitter Philanthropist of the Year, which is a very prestigious award that it turns out he created. So embarrassing. So embarrassing, bro. So embarrassing. So, okay, so this guy's basically a nobody. He's just the grandson of a rich guy. But because of all of this, he gets this big social media following, which he then uses to try and get the attention of Donald Trump. If Donald Trump retweets this, I'll give $30,000 to a veteran on Twitter. This works. And through his social media following and his pro-Trump stance, he ends up becoming nominated by Donald Trump to head our federal housing finance agency. Despite no real qualifications. I mean, his grandfather knew house building, but he just inherited it. So now he is the head of our federal housing finance agency and is obviously a close Trump ally. Now, this comes in handy when Donald Trump wants to get rid of Lisa Cook, because he gets Bill Pulte to pull the data on Lisa Cook's mortgages for the houses. She has 2 houses, and claim that she was claiming both of her properties as her primary residence, which would be mortgage fraud. Okay? That's the idea. It's say I mean, it's minor, but it is mortgage fraud. The idea is that she claimed both of them as her primary residence, and therefore she must be removed. She can't be trusted. We can't put her in the Federal Reserve. She's committing mortgage fraud. So, for the first time in the Fed's 111-year history, a sitting governor was attempted to be removed by a president, which again, the Fed is supposed to be independent. The whole point is the president can't be bullying it, pushing it around, because it reduces the trustworthiness of our independent Federal Reserve. That's the idea. Is if it's seen like he controls it, then he can lower rates at will. So we tried to remove her. He said, it's a serious breach of trust. We have to protect the integrity of the Federal Reserve. Okay? Basically saying this mortgage fraud is very serious. It's very important to me. We just simply can't stand for it. The only problem is there's 2 problems. Number 1 is the documents have started to actually come out, and it turns out she didn't do that. She claimed her second residence as a vacation home, not a primary residence. The documents are, so first of all, not even true. But secondly, because of all the hullabaloo around this, because of all the drama, because of all the interest, because of all the looking into it, it turns out 3 of Trump's cabinet members did do this. They did do mortgage fraud. They did claim multiple primary residences, multiple houses as primary residence, including Labor Secretary Lori Chavez, Transportation Secretary Sean Duffy, and EPA Agency Administrator Lee Zeldin. All 3 of them that Trump appointed have claimed multiple residences as their primary residence. None of them are being investigated. None of them are getting fired. Despite saying that this is like extremely important for integrity, none of them are being followed up on. Additionally, this has just happened within the past 24 hours. Scott Bessent, Treasury Secretary, has also called 2 houses his principal residence. This is the highest up. This is even more important than her job. And it's not being discussed or followed up on. And additionally, Bill Pulte, the guy who Trump got to pull this data and accuse Lisa Cook, it turns out his fucking parents, both of his parents also have done this mortgage fraud. Okay? So it seems a little bit hypocritical. It seems a bit crazy to focus on, I think it's very transparent what you're trying to do, which is gain control of the Federal Reserve. So thankfully, today, the appeals court rejected Trump's bid to fire Fed Governor Lisa Cook, and she did vote today. She was one of the votes that just happened in the last few minutes to lower rates 0.25. So she's still active. Trump cannot remove her for now, okay? Remains to be seen what will happen next and how this will play out, but that is the current status of what's going on. So given all that, we are now a few minutes away, and we're going to watch Jerome Powell's press conference again to see what he thinks about the job market, what he thinks about inflation expectations, and what they think about future rate cuts going forward. And again, the big words we're looking for are mid-cycle adjustment. If he says this, what they're implying is that they're going to be very cautious to lower rates further. And what the market wants to hear is that we're looking to do more rate cuts. We're seeing ourselves at a lower rate at the end of the year. We're going to keep going. That's the idea. Okay. So we will see. Most likely what he's going to say, if you want to get your bingo card ready, is he's going to say, we are data dependent. We have a dual mandate. We're going to follow the data and we're going to adjust as we go forward. That's what he's going to say 400 times in different ways. But he's going to say psych +1. What if he gets in there and says, psych, we're doubling rates? We fooled you fucks. Why do they only do small changes? Because it has a massive effect on the economy and you don't want to be too rapid with it. Even small changes in interest rates have a huge ripple effect, and it takes a while to get out into the economy. So you don't want to just do massive multi-point swings. You want to do small changes every few months to try and, that's the idea. Fuck it, just do minus 10%. We're at like 4.5 right now. So you think rates should be negative 5.5%? We would get NFTs back, bro. We would get, I mean, yeah. That's awesome. Negative interest rates. Japan did it very briefly, not that far deep, but Japan did do it. Hey, Truck, can I raid you? I got to pick up my kids. Yeah, of course. For sure. Welcome, Stock Guyers. Pick up the phone real quick. You mean you're calling me? Or what do you mean? Are we friends on Discord? Or you just got my phone number? Both. I did the knock thing here. I don't know how that works. How do you knock? Dude, I don't fucking know how this works. I only worked at Twitch, bro. I was supposed to know this. Uh, Dude, I don't. Where the fuck do I knock? Where the fuck do I? Let's see. Stock guy is the one who knocks. Yeah, for sure. For sure. I'm checking. Oh, I got it. I got it. We're figuring this out. Okay. Hello. Hello. Stock guy. Bro, it ain't on me. Hello.
Can you hear me?
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
What's up, bro?
What's going on? Hey, what do you think about this? What do you think with the rate?
I mean, it's what we expected, right? Here's what I'll say, man. It's like
Hear it. Let me hear it.
Go for it. Am I losing you?
I got you.
Oh, okay. I was saying we got it's just two boomers on a call, bro. We're not gonna get it done. The tech will kill us. No, I'm not getting your sound. It's like you're talking, but I'm not getting your sound. It's popping in and out. Okay, well, I'll just say it if you can hear me. I agree. The labor market's terrible. I get they have to cut, but man, it feels like they're just giving up on 2% inflation. It's just completely given up on. And we haven't even got the full impact of the tariffs. I'm very expecting good prices just to get worse and worse. I think people are going to get more and more frustrated with inflation. If you're talking, I can't hear you.
No, I'm not. No, I'm listening. I'm just
sorry. It's popping purple. It's popping purple on my screen like you're talking. So all right. Anyway, yeah, I don't know. What do you think?
I mean, you're right. I mean, my worry is that they're cutting into, like you said, an inflationary environment, which, I mean, I'm not going to invoke the '80s with Paul Volcker and stuff like that, but what's worse right now, the unemployment and the labor market that we're worried about fixing, or the inflation? So, like you said, they gave up on it. They're at like 3% now. They've just given up, and
it's just bouncing off 3, and you're like, it's clearly going the wrong direction. It's like it's going back up already, and they're cutting into that. So it's like gonna roar. It's gonna go bad, and they can't do. If people listening don't know, back in the '80s, they had some inflation. They raised rates. They thought the fight was done. They lowered them. Inflation roared back, and so Paul Volcker, who's kind of a badass at the time, had to raise rates to like 20%. It was the most absurd time that, like, in American history for rates to break the back of inflation. And like, we can't do that anymore. That's not possible. Yeah,
you're right. We're too interconnected globally now. It would take everybody down. So it's kind of like, I mean, but what are we going to do though? Is it stagflation? I mean,
that's what it looks like, bro. That's what I'm saying. It looks like stagflation.
At least for the market. I mean, it's good for the market because everybody's pouring money in. I mean, 62% of Americans are now in the stock market as opposed to 45% before, and like $5 billion a day from retail is just like dollar cost averaging. So no one's going to touch their equities, but if enough people lose their job, they will. So, I don't know, man. I don't know what to take from this.
Yeah, I don't know either. I mean, I'm excited to watch the press conference, see what he says. I do think that, I don't know. I do think the job market is very bad. So I can see this being the right move, but whether it's going to, I mean, look, you look at the last time we did rate cuts, 07 and 01, they do this little 0.25 rate cut in September, and then it always goes into a recession. It's like right before, they're always like, right as the rate cuts start, everyone thinks it's going to save things. It doesn't save things. Things get worse, and they have to cut rates down to 0. This has happened twice now, so.
Yeah, but they changed the definition of a recession, so which
so we're fine.
Listen, that's what they did in 2022. Nobody wants to say, "Oh, we weren't in a recession," because technically we had 2 quarters of negative GDP growth, but the labor market was fine. So I mean, we're okay.
We're all good. You're right. Things are sick.
So what are you doing? Calls or puts through Powell?
I'm not a calls and puts on Powell kind of a guy, bro. I'm gold.
Hey, we got into gold junior. We got into miners earlier this year.
Hey, good call, bro. Yeah,
that worked out pretty well.
I was a little late to miners, honestly, and they've been doing very well. But yeah, Miners like gold miners, Chad. You fucking
Yeah, no. Oh shit. Okay, yeah. All right. So for everybody who's not there, yeah, we Atrioc and I got invested and involved with miners, gold miners, not that kind of other thing.
Start by saying gold miners.
Yeah, no, this is Twitch, not Kick. Okay, I'm just kidding. But yeah. All right. Well, listen. I told you that we need to do a co-stream sometime, for actually because I think that you and I have a lot of the same ideas, but in the way we look at it, but we look at it from different angles, and I think we'd have a lot of fun. Let's make that happen. But I'm a boomer and have kids, and I gotta go pick them up from school right now. So I need somebody to
babysit. You mean the babysit the chat? The other kids.
So if you don't mind, can I send the D-Gens over there?
Please shoot them my way. And yeah, let's get connected on Discord or social media.
Soon on that one.
We'll do sorry. Okay, bro.
A little bit soon on that one.
All right, check Blue Sky. We're both canceled. Stock Guy, thank you for coming on. I will reach out and let's do a collab pretty soon. That'd be fun.
I will reach out. Oh, excuse me. I'll have my people get with your people. We're big time now. Okay, we don't do our own work anymore.
You're so right.
What's that, babe? Right. Yeah, I'll be there in a second. Yeah,
you're busy. Hey,
have the butler do it. Okay, our garden guy is here.
Holy shit, this guy's big time.
All right, listen, appreciate it. I'm gonna send him over your way, and thanks for babysitting.
All right, bro. Talk to you soon.
Bye. All right, bro. I gotta get naked and get off screen. No,
bro's trying to fucking get me canceled on Blue Sky, bro. Trying to grow my account there from 5 to 6 followers. Anyway, thank you, Stock Guy, for the raid. Yeah, we're gonna be watching. Let's get the stream ready, actually. FOMC live stream. Jerome Powell, what do you got for me? Live here in 10 minutes. Oh, look at this jazzy music. Dude, every single time we do one of these, people come in the 30 minutes before the conference. They tell me, the rate cut already happened. We know, we talked about it. And they tell me, it's already over. It's already over. Because they saw a tweet. And they don't understand that it's the same process every single time. They announce the rate cut, then 30 minutes later, there's a press conference. But every single time, people come in and do the same thing. And I don't know how to explain to you that I'm aware. I've watched 100 of these. I know what's going on. You don't have to explain it to me. Please collab with the Atrioc. He seems like a really funny guy. I will say, his audience, my understanding, is way more interested in day-to-day, what's the trade, How are we going to make some money today? What calls are we buying? What puts? And that's not really. I'm kind of not about that. But I think he's got a good head on his shoulders. He's giving good advice to people. And people want to hear that. Some people really care about that and they want to know. So I think it'll be a fun collab. Dude, we should have done one of those stock games like we did with Doug. Where fucking Aiden is crushing us. Did you see the Trump guy voted for 1.5? Oh, we talk about that. So while we're waiting, again, they released the dot plot of who voted what of the 12 Fed governors. And obviously there is a, how do I put this? Some of the people on the FOMC are trying to angle to be the next Jerome Powell. The way you do that is show Trump how much you want to cut rates. So people are loudly voting for jumbo rate cuts to be like, look at me. I love cutting rates. Jerome Powell won't do it, but I'm voting for it so that when the time comes to pick the next chairman of the Federal Reserve, Trump will pick the person most amenable to his preferred choice, which is cutting rates. Yeah, they're kind of peacocking, if you will. Stock guy, thank you for the raid. Thank you for the raid. He was the only dissent this meeting too. Yeah, exactly. This is a raid. Everybody hands up now. Let's see. Yeah, we're going to go live here in 6 minutes to watch. It is crazy that, like, okay, so the rate cut was 0.25. The crazy outlier dissent was a guy saying we should have cut 0.5, jumbo rate cut. Scott Bessent was on the news the other day saying they should cut 1.5, which would be the largest rate cut America's ever done. Like, he was like, we need a fucking a mega jumbo. Like, it's obvious they just want to juice things. Even if inflation runs hot, they want to juice things and keep the job market okay until midterms. Everything lately economically from the Trump administration has been like, keep shit going through midterms, which to me is almost heartwarming because it means they believe it'll be a real vote. It's like, if they're going through all this effort, that means they think the vote will be real and they have to try to win, which is kind of nice. That's actually good. I'm heartwarmed by that. Hopefully things work out here. I can't decide if I think Scott Bessent is a smart man undercover or he's on board with Trump policies. I know that Scott Bessent is a smart man because I've read and listened to Scott Bessent stuff long before he ever was involved in this administration. But what's odd is the things he said before he got hired for this are like the exact opposite of what he's saying now. So it is hard to tell. I don't know if he's undercover so much as like maybe he just likes power and will say whatever. So it's tough. It's tough for me to get a read on, but it's easy for me to be soft supportive of him because the alternative was Howard Lutnick, who actually is a used car salesman idiot. Howard Lutnick actually is just a dumb asshole, bro. Like, he doesn't know what he's talking about. And that was the other guy that could have been Treasury Secretary. Scott Bessent at least like understands how the system works and can like, he knows how things work and they're connected. So we'll see. Anyway, we're 4 minutes away from No Home Jerome getting out on stage and telling us how great everything is. It is fun. I mean, we've watched a lot of these on stream. And if you go back to I think I have all the clips up, right? I put a clip every time. If you go back like 6 months and watch the Jerome Powell press conferences then, I'm screaming at the screen that the job market is clearly bad. And he's like, job market's pretty strong. And now, 6 months later, when we know all those numbers got revised down by 1 million, and he's going to tell us today, well, now the job market's pretty bad, we have to cut. It's like, people knew it. People knew then. Since you're streaming together with Stock Guy, I mean, I don't know how to undo it, but did you see that Dan Clancy's testifying before Congress? Holy shit, he is. Dan Clancy's testifying before Congress about the crimes in Clancyville or what? About time they hauled his ass up there to answer for what's going on in Clancyville. Finally, some justice. Dude, we should stream that. Is that going to be live? October 8th. Gabe Newell? Wait, look at this. Wait, we're almost live for Jerome Powell, but they're going to have Gabe Newell, Dan Clancy, and Steve Huffman of Reddit to testify on radicalization of online forum. Oh, it's a Charlie Kirk thing. Oh my God. This is going to be 2 hours of boomers asking what Discord is. So what's a Discord? And why are kids getting radicalized on this thing? Oh, that's what this is. And what's a Twitch? That's exactly what this is going to be. Okay, this is not as exciting as I thought. Have you seen those posts of like parents messaging their kids? Hey, were you friends with this Tyler guy on Discord? I know you're always on Discord, because they think Discord is like one chat room. And like, I know you're on Discord and the news said the shooter was on Discord, or like, what? Don't talk to that guy. And it's like, that's not how Discord. So. The more I think about it, the more it's fucking crazy they're cutting rates, bro. I understand the job market's bad, but also the stock market's at all-time highs. Housing prices have not gone down. Everything is still frothy. Everything's still bubbly. Crypto's up. Everything's up. And inflation is above 3%. The idea that we're cutting rates is actually, it's just stupid. It's it's such a desperate fucking play for juicy economy before the midterms. Debt isn't real. It's funny you say that. We're about live here. It's funny you say that, but I was reading. He's one of the left party guys in France, Mélenchon. I was trying to hear what his debt plan was, because like maybe he's like raised taxes on the rich or something. I was like, I could get behind that. And he just said the debt isn't real. I watched this. Is it live? He's like, the debt's not a real problem. It's made up. And it's like
job gains have slowed and downside risks to employment have risen. At the same time, inflation has risen recently and remains somewhat elevated.
Yeah.
In support of our goals and in light of the shift in the balance of risks, today the Federal Open Market Committee decided to lower our policy interest rate by 0.25 percentage point.
You gave in, Jerome.
We also decided to continue to reduce our securities holdings. I'll have more to say about monetary policy after briefly reviewing economic developments.
Okay, tell us how it's going.
Recent indicators suggest that growth of economic activity has moderated.
Oh!
GDP rose at a pace of around 1.5% in the first half of the year.
Things aren't good?
Down from 2.5% last year. The moderation in growth largely reflects a slowdown in consumer spending.
What?
In contrast, business investment in equipment and intangibles has picked up from last year's pace. Activity in the housing sector remains weak. In our summary of economic projections, the median participant projects GDP to rise 1.6% this year and 1.8% next year,
okay,
a touch stronger than projected in June.
Healthcare spending.
In the labor market, the unemployment rate edged up to 4.3% in August, but remains little changed over the past year at a relatively low level. Payroll job gains have slowed significantly to a pace of just 29,000 per month over the past 3 months.
Yeah, insanely low.
A good part of the slowing likely reflects a decline in the growth of the labor force due to lower immigration and lower labor force participation.
Bro, it's a nation
Even
of
so,
300
labor demand
million,
has
and we're making
softened,
22,000 jobs
pace
a month,
job
and they're
creation
low-quality jobs.
appears to be running below the break-even rate needed to hold the unemployment rate constant. In addition, wage growth has continued to moderate while still outpacing inflation. Overall, the marked slowing in both the supply of and demand for workers is unusual. In this less dynamic and somewhat softer labor market, the downside risks to employment appear to have risen.
Yeah.
In our SEP, the median projection for the unemployment rate is 4.5% at the end of this year and edges down thereafter.
No, never. I wish I could
Inflation
pause.
has eased
Can I
significantly
pause?
from its highs
Oh.
in mid-2022, but
Never.
remains
Does it
somewhat
just
elevated
stop there
relative
and
to
go
our
back down
2%
next year?
longer-run
Never.
goal. Estimates based on the Consumer Price Index and other data indicate that total PCE prices rose 2.7% over the 12 months ending in August, and that, excluding the volatile food and energy categories, core PCE prices rose 2.9%.
Excluding
These
food and
readings are higher
energy,
than
it's still up
earlier in the year,
3%.
as inflation for goods has picked up. In contrast, disinflation appears to be continuing for services. Near-term measures of inflation expectations have moved up, on balance, over the course of this year on news about tariffs, as reflected in both market and survey-based measures.
I agree, Jerome Powell, tariffs are bad.
Beyond the next year or so, however, most measures of longer-term expectations remain consistent with our 2% inflation goal. The median projection in the SEP for total
These
PCE
projections
inflation
are
is
horseshit.
3.0%.
It's not going
this
to
year,
magically go
and falls
down
to
next year
2.6%
after
in
your cut rates.
2026 and to 2.1% in 2027. Our monetary policy actions are guided by our dual mandate to promote maximum employment and stable prices.
I'll go on a dual
for the
mandate with
American
you,
people.
Jerome Powell. We got to find
At
two other
today's
guys.
meeting, the committee decided to lower the target range for the federal funds rate by a quarter percentage point to 4 to 4.25%, and to continue reducing the size of our balance sheet.
Okay.
Changes to government policies continue to evolve, and their effects on the economy remain uncertain. Higher tariffs
He's
have
saying
begun to
tariffs
push
suck?
up prices in some categories of goods, but their overall effects on economic activity and inflation remain to be seen. A reasonable base case is that the effects on inflation will be relatively short-lived, a one-time shift
Short-lived.
in the price level.
He's reading.
But it is also possible that the inflationary effects could instead be more persistent, and that is a risk to be assessed and managed. Our obligation is to ensure that a one-time increase in the price level does not become an ongoing inflation problem.
Okay.
In the near term,
It will
risks
be
to inflation
for
are
regular
tilted to the
people.
upside and risks to employment to the downside, a challenging situation.
Stagflation.
When our goals are in tension like this, our framework calls for us to balance both sides of our dual mandate.
Yeah, love it.
With downside risks to employment having increased, the balance of risks has shifted. Accordingly, we judged it appropriate at this meeting to take another step toward a more neutral policy stance.
Okay.
With today's decision, we remain well positioned to respond in a timely way to potential economic developments.
I mean,
We will continue to
historically, though.
determine the appropriate stance of monetary policy based on the incoming data, the evolving outlook, and the balance of risks. In our SEP, FOMC participants wrote down their individual assessments of an appropriate path for the federal funds rate,
Okay.
based on what each participant judges to be the most likely scenario for the economy. The median participant projects that the appropriate level of the federal funds rate will be 3.6% at the end of this year,
Okay.
3.4%
So they're
at the end of
expecting cuts,
2026,
more cuts.
and 3.1% at the end of 2027.
These are the votes.
This path is 1/4 percentage point lower than projected in June. As is always the case, these individual forecasts are subject to uncertainty, and they're not a committee plan or decision.
Don't say mid-cycle
Policy
adjustment.
is not on a preset course. The Fed has been assigned two goals for monetary policy:
We know.
maximum employment and stable prices. We remain committed to supporting maximum employment, bringing inflation sustainably to our 2% goal, and keeping longer-term inflation expectations well anchored.
Yep.
Our success in delivering on these goals matters to all Americans. We understand that our actions affect communities, families, and businesses across the country.
They do. It's a hard job. I'm not.
Everything we do is in service to our public mission, and we at the Fed will do everything we can to achieve our maximum employment and price stability goals.
Okay.
Thank you. I look forward to our discussion.
So let's be real. Here's some questions. All right, we go. Let's get some questions.
Great. Thank you. Chris Rugaber at Associated Press. As you know, Fed Governor Stephen Myron has continued, kept his position at the White House, even as he's joined the Fed board. This is the first time, I believe, the Fed's board has had someone with executive branch ties in decades. Does this compromise the Fed's independence from day-to-day politics? And relatedly, how can you maintain the public's perception the Fed is politically independent with this dynamic?
Great
Thank you.
question.
So we did welcome a new committee member today, as we always do. and the committee remains united in pursuing our dual mandate goals. We're strongly committed to maintaining our independence, and beyond that, I really don't have anything to share.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, the truth is, once you're gone in 2026, it won't be
Fed
independent
officials have
anymore.
spoken extensively about the impact of tariffs on inflation, although perhaps with many companies appearing to eat the tariffs, tariffs may be impacting the labor market and other parts of the economy instead. Do you see that as a possible outcome here, that tariffs are the reason we're seeing some slowing, particularly in the labor market, rather than in inflation?
Dude, we're seeing
it's certainly possible.
higher inflation and worse labor market.
We're beginning to
because
see
tariffs are
we have begun
stupid.
To see, goods prices showing through into higher inflation, and actually the increase in goods prices accounts for most of the increase in inflation, or perhaps all of the increase in inflation over the course of this year. Those are not very large effects at this point. And we do expect them to continue to build over the course of the rest of the year and into next year. And it's also possible that there may be effects on employment, but that I would say if you're looking at why employment is doing what it's doing, that's much more about the change in immigration. So the supply of workers has obviously come way down. There's very little growth, if any, in the supply of workers. And at the same time, demand for workers has also come down quite sharply.
Okay.
And
That's a
to
bad
the point
sign. That's a
where we
recessionary.
see what I've called a curious balance. It's typically when we say things are in balance, that sounds good, but in this case, the balance is because both supply and demand have come down quite sharply. Now demand coming down a little more sharply because we now see the unemployment rate edging up.
Yeah, it sounds really bad. It's really bad. That sounds really bad. We have fewer workers and still not enough jobs for them. The jobs are falling faster than the amount of workers.
Policy setting.
So
And
I don't
inflation
think
is
we
rising.
can say that. But what we can say is this, that over the course of this year, we've kept our policy at a restrictive level. And people have different views, but a clearly restrictive level, I would say. So, and we were able to do that over the course of this year because the labor market was in very solid condition with strong job creation and all those things. I think if you go back to April and now look at the revised job creation numbers for May, June, July, and August, I can no longer say that. So what that means is that the risks were clearly tilted toward inflation. I would say they're moving toward equality. Maybe they're not quite out of equality. We don't need to know that. But we do know that they've moved meaningfully toward greater equality, the risks between the two goals, and that suggests that we should be moving in the direction of neutral, and that's what we did today.
Under what circumstances would a larger than 25 basis points rate cut be warranted? And how seriously was that
A horrible job
entertained
market
at
would
your
be.
meeting this week?
There wasn't widespread support at all for a 50 basis point cut today. I think we've done very large rate hikes and very large rate cuts in the last 5 years. And you tend to do those at a time when we feel that policy is a place and needs to move.
I mean, the last time
quickly
they
in
did a
place.
jumbo was like
That's
COVID.
not at all.
Fix your fucking system, Jerome Powell. Oh my God. Your third mandate should be a working tech stack.
And see
Oh my God. Oh my God.
cuts in the last 5 years a place and needs to move quickly to a place. That's not at all. And I think
Is there a YouTube version? What the fuck is this? They cut the bit rate is what they did.
Trying to square the shift in the rate forecast in the SEP towards more cuts than just.
We've done very large rate hikes and very large rate cuts.
Okay, we're caught up.
in the last 5 years.
Oh, I
And
can
you
pause
tend
on
to do
here too.
those
Wait, this is
at a time
awesome.
When you feel that policy is out of place and needs to move quickly to a new place. That's not at all what I feel certainly now. I feel like our policy has been doing the right thing so far this year. I think we were right to wait and see how tariffs and inflation and the labor market evolved. I think we're now reacting to the much lower level of job creation and other evidence of softening in the labor market.
Okay, I just want to say, he's talking about the lower level of job creation because they revised down the numbers from the past year by 1 million jobs. So the times he was saying that we had good job creation weren't true. Now, I don't blame him for being data dependent, but it is kind of crazy that they have to have other ways of looking at the economy than just waiting for those numbers, because those numbers are so consistently unreliable. Can I make it louder? I can't really.
And while those risks are maybe not fully balanced, but moving in the direction of balance now, and so that warrants a change in policy.
I can make myself
Colby
quieter.
Smith with the New York Times. Should we be viewing today's cut as the committee taking out some insurance against the possibility that the labor market is at risk of weakening? Or is it the committee's view that the dynamics of a downturn...
Dude, why is everyone still saying like it's at risk of weakening? It is weakening. Everybody knows it. This is like the worst time to be looking for a job in like 34 years. Maybe not, maybe 2011, but in a long time. It's fucking weak. It's bad.
...are already in place. I guess I'm just, trying to square the shift in the rate forecast.
I'll
in
say
the
outside of
SEP,
09
towards
to
more
2010.
cuts than just 3 months ago, with the fact that the forecast for unemployment didn't change.
Yeah, I think you could think of this in a way as a risk management cut, because if you look at the SEP, actually, the projections for growth this year and next actually ticked up just a little bit, and inflation and unemployment didn't really move much. So what's different now? What's different now is that you see a very different picture of the risks to the labor market. You've seen, we were looking at 150,000 jobs a month at the time of the last meeting, and now we see the revisions and we see the new numbers. And I don't want to put too much emphasis on payroll job creation, but it's just one of the things that suggests that the labor market is really cooling off, and that tells you that it's time to take that into account in our in our policy.
Yeah.
The SEP, once again, the median participant has inflation higher than previously expected by the end of next year, and the Fed not getting back to the 2% target until 2028. So I guess I'm just wondering how you characterize...
Jesus Christ! They said that? The median voter in this Fed meeting is saying that we won't get back till 2% until 2028. That is fucking 3 years of inflation running hot. The prices are going to be fucking insane. And that's if they're right. Realistically, they're probably going to change it by 28. Especially if they're cutting rates now, dude. That's what I'm saying. Like, I think cutting rates, I get the labor market is bad. And I can justify this cut. I get it. But man, it's like inflation is what really kills regular people. If we don't cut rates and the economy does somewhat tank, people will lose jobs, and that is painful, and I get that. But the real people that will be hurt are falling asset prices, falling stock market, falling housing prices. And that stuff is actually really good for regular people because it lets them get in on the economy. So, I don't know. I think cutting is, again, trying to reinflate this fucking balloon for boomers.
The risk to price pressures of kicking off.
I get having no job. Again, it's a balance. I get it. I understand that eventually people have to have fucking jobs. I think inflation is the slow and insidious killer, bro. Inflation is the one that makes people literally disconnect from society. It's once you feel like you're falling behind the rate of inflation, it's over.
A series of cuts at this point.
Yeah, so I would look at it this way. We fully understand and appreciate that we need to remain fully committed to restoring 2% inflation on a sustained basis, and we will do that. At the same time, we've got to weigh the risks to the two goals. And I would say since April, to me, the risks of higher and more persistent inflation have probably become a little less. And that's partly because the labor market has softened, GDP growth has slowed. So I would just say that...
Okay, small pause, and I'll let the rest of it run. This is probably the most negative we've ever seen Powell in a meeting. We've watched a lot of these. People have watched this with me. This is the most negative he's been on the economy in any one of them. He's like pretty much consistently saying that inflation is really bad and job market is really bad. And he's like he's not like defending it like he usually does. He's not like, well, it's strong. This is like very negative. Like he even looks kind of defeated, bro.
That the risks there have been less than one might think. And in terms of the labor market, what we're seeing is unemployment is still low. It's still a relatively low rate, but we're seeing downside risks.
He's quiet quitting.
Michael McKee from Bloomberg Radio and Television.
I mean, okay, sorry to pause again, but like I feel for him in that he is like trying to maintain Fed independence while the president is trying to fire people on the Fed, add new people who are connected to the White House, trying to fire him, accusing him of things. He knows he's going to be gone by early 26. He's got two mandates that are going in opposite directions that are very hard. I get that it's a hard job. I'm not even personally blaming Jerome Powell here. I'm just saying it's like, man, this is tough.
I'm a little confused by your explanation of the Fed cutting rates because of unemployment. If you think that most of what's happening in the employment area is related to immigration, which your rate cuts wouldn't address, how do you see that as more important than inflation, which has remained almost a full percentage point above your target?
Well, I was saying that what's happening in the labor market has more to do with immigration than it has to do with tariffs. That was the question I was answering. So I wouldn't say that all of what's happening in the labor market is due to tariffs. I mean, you clearly have a slowing in it due to immigration. You clearly have a slowing in demand, which is now perhaps more than that in supply, and we know that because the unemployment rate has ticked up. So
I have a graph here.
So that's what I meant by that.
I think a follow-up. Every year since 2015, the SEP has forecast that you would hit.
Okay, he's saying demand is slowing. What I want to say is, just so you understand, high-income Americans are behind roughly half of all U.S. consumer spending. The highest it's been since the data goes back to 1989. So what we have is that the economy is being kept up by people in the top 10% spending, the K-shaped economy. Okay? I just want you to understand, it's like, if the rich boomers stop going on vacations and going out to restaurants and buying golf trips, and if they stop doing that, the economy is going to fall apart. It's the last thing keeping things going. Nobody else has money to spend that's not borrowed.
Your target 2 years later. And this year, this SEP says you're going to hit your target 2 years later. 2% does not seem to be in sight. Does that suggest that the 2% target is not really achievable? And does this present any credibility problems for you in telling people that that's what you're going to do?
Nobody believes you're going to hit 2%, bro. Nobody.
Well, I mean, you're right. It does say we're going to get to 2% inflation in 2028, at the end of 28. But that's literally how you put the projections together. You're writing down a rate path, which is designed to create, over the course of the SEP, time frame, 2% inflation and maximum employment too. So that's all that is. No one really knows where the economy.
Bro, I kind of feel bad for Jerome. This is like he's got no fight in him this meeting.
Write down policy that you believe would return to the
Jerome Powell seems old and sad, dude. I actually feel bad.
Exercise.
He's getting beat down, bro. I think he's finally given up.
Thanks so much, Elizabeth Schulze with ABC News. The latest inflation report shows that prices are still going up across key categories for many households, including groceries. What will the Fed do if prices pick up more?
So our expectation, and you can see this consistently through the year, has been that inflation will move up this year, but that basically because of the effects on goods prices from tariffs, but that those will turn out to be a one-time price increase as opposed to creating an inflationary process. That's been our forecast.
Okay, he said it, but like the idea is that, prices are getting high this year, but it's because of tariffs, so it's a one-time thing. So it's not a problem. But I just want to reiterate how little the person buying groceries gives a shit about that justification. They don't care. I'm not saying he's lying. I'm saying that could be the case, but it just doesn't matter. It's just too expensive. I don't know. Like, it's either you can afford it or you can't. So the idea that it's not from a sustained process, so we don't have to include it in our calculations is I don't know.
Pretty much all the individual forecasts say that. We can't just assume that though, right? We have to, our job is literally to make sure that is what happens, and we will do that job. right now, the situation we're in is that we see inflation. We continue to expect it to move up, maybe not as high as we would have expected it to move up a few months ago. The pass-through of the tariffs into inflation has been slower and smaller. The labor market has softened. So the case for there being a persistent inflation outbreak is less. And so that's why we think it's time for us really to acknowledge that the risks to the other mandate have grown and that we should move in the direction. It's time for you to finally acknowledge it? Of neutral. So what will we do? We'll do what we need to do, but we have two mandates and we try to balance them. For a long time, our framework says that when our two goals are in tension, this is quite an unusual situation. How do we decide what to do? Because our tools can't do two things at once. What we do is we ask which is farther from, how far is each from the goal and how long is it expected to get to the goal? So, and then we think about those things and we see, as I mentioned, our policy had been really skewed toward inflation for a long time, really.
What does Big A look sad? It's almost like, listen, we've been saying this on the stream for a very long time, but it's almost sad when Jerome Powell finally admits it because it makes me realize that like it was kind of nice when he still denied it. It kind of gives you like this shadow of like, okay, well, maybe, but now it's like, bro, he's just being so real about it. He's like, inflation is bad, but the job market is even worse. So we got to do what we got to do.
Now we see that there's downside risk clearly in the labor market. And so we're moving in the direction of more neutral policy.
How concerned are you about the slowdown in the jobs market for households at home, especially younger Americans struggling to land a job?
So it's an interesting labor market. And obviously we think it's appropriate that we reduce our rates so that we become more neutral, which presumably will be better for the labor market. You see people who are sort of more at the margins, so kids coming out of college and younger people, minorities are having a hard time finding jobs. The overall job finding rate is very, very low. However, the layoff rate is also very low. So you've got a low firing, low hiring environment, and the concern is that if you start to see layoffs, the people who are laid off there won't be a lot of hiring going on. So that could very quickly flow into higher unemployment.
By the way, I'm just going to say it here. I've said this a million times. This is what's going to happen. It's not the first time in history this has happened. You have a low hire, low fire thing because jobs are afraid of letting go of their employees because they're worried it's going to be hard to ride them back. Okay. But then once the dam breaks and people start firing, it becomes a flood. And then there's layoffs everywhere and there's no jobs to be found. And it's bad. That is what is going to happen almost certainly. Okay. It's like when the employment rate starts ticking up, it never just stops. Like they say, it never just goes flat. I want to pull up a graph, but it never just goes flat. It always rockets up once it gets past a certain point. It's like the Psalm rule.
In a healthier economy, healthier labor market, there would be jobs for those people. But now the hiring rate is very, very low. So that's been a growing concern over the last few months. And it's one of the reasons why we think it's appropriate that we begin to shift our policy focus toward a more balanced one.
Yeah, I'm sorry to pause all this time, but this is interesting. Let's talk about it. This is the U.S. employment rate. Okay? Do you ever notice a time where it's flat? Whenever it hits a low, it starts ticking up and it always spikes up. It always. When the unemployment rate hits a low, bounces off and starts going up, it's a snowball effect. Okay? When it's getting better, it gets better really fast because jobs getting hired creates more spending, creates more jobs. But jobs getting fired creates less spending, creates less jobs. They both snowball in opposite directions. So the idea that the projection is we're going to get to like employment right here and it's going to freeze at 4.5 is absurd. It's never happened that way and it won't happen that way. So things getting worse leads to things getting worse, bro. I'm not crazy for saying this. And it's like disingenuous for him to imply that it's not. I guess he has to do that to not panic people. But So yeah, people are saying 65. Okay, but that's okay. Okay. Okay, sure. I mean, this is down, then flat, then down, then it bounces off the lows. It's not like it bounces off the lows, then evens out. Okay? And you're saying 77. Wait, rockets up, then flattens out, then rockets up again? What are you? You're saying 6-7. I'm so stupid. You're just saying 6-7 because you're fucking Twitch chatters. I'm actually like looking at like, well, 67. What are you talking about? Oh God.
Steve Leisman, CNBC. Mr. Chair, in the past, during rate cuts, you used the word recalibration. And I wonder if you pointedly did not use it this time. And in fact, when you said policy is not on a preset course, did you mean that as sort of the opposite of recalibration? Are we meeting to meeting, data point by data point? Are we in the process here of getting back to neutral? Thank you.
So I think we're in a meeting by meeting situation. We're going to be looking at the data. Let me say a word about the SEP really here. So we often point this out. What the SEP is it's an accumulation of the individual projections of 19 people, showing what they believe at a particular moment in time to be the most likely path for the economy and thus the appropriate path for monetary policy as well. And as you know, we don't debate or try to agree on what that is. We just write them down and accumulate them. We do sometimes discuss them. And so we always say we're not on a preset path, and we really mean that. The actual decisions we make are going to be based on the incoming data, the evolving outlook, and the balance of risks at the time the decisions are actually made. So you will have seen that we have 10 participants out of 19 who wrote down.
I'm sorry. We'll actually just fast forward, I think, a little bit. Listen, if you are somebody that gets a chance to ask Jerome Powell a question, do not ask him a question where he can say, we're going to be data dependent. Because he will always say that, and you're wasting everyone's time. Don't ask him like, well, are you going to look at the data or not? He's going to say, we're data dependent. He always says it. It's a waste of a question. It's a default answer he's used for years and years and years and years and years and years. Just
down 2 or more cuts for the remainder of the year, and 9 who wrote down fewer than, in fact, in a good number of cases, no more cuts. So rather than looking at this as certainty, I would encourage people, as always, to look at the SEP as through the lens of probability. And so there are different possible outcomes and likelihoods rather than this one is certain and this one isn't happening. So that's what I would say.
Thank you for getting to my follow-up question, which was, is the dispersion in the outlook a sign of uncertainty of policy in the meetings to come? Thank you.
It is such an unusual situation. Ordinarily, when the labor market is weak, inflation is low. And when the labor market is really strong, that's when you got to be careful about inflation. So we have a situation where we have two-sided risk. And that means there's no risk-free path. And so it's quite a difficult situation for policymakers. And it's not at all surprising to me that you have a range of views. It's not so much about having different views for the path of the economy, but it's partly that. But it's also partly about what's the right thing to do in light of the tension between the two goals. How do you weight them? How worried are you about one versus the other?
This is actually a great answer, and I super agree. It's a very hard job. He's in a very hard situation. He didn't create this problem. He didn't do the government spending. He didn't do the tariffs, okay? I don't blame Jerome Powell at a fundamental level. Maybe he could have been quicker, in like post-COVID to raise rates to stop inflation. I get it. But he's doing his job. He has a very hard task. This is a fair answer, okay? There's no easy solution. And whether or not you think jobs are more important than inflation is really up to your personal bias. Again, I'm biased because I'm somebody, I'm not going to lose my job. So it's like easier for me to say like we should focus on inflation. But like I can totally understand if you're somebody with fucking a mortgage payment you want to refinance, or you're scared about your job loss, then of course then it's like you need to lower rates. I get it. I do fucking get it. I think long term for the economy, it's healthier and more balanced to break the back of inflation than let it run hot, but it's a tough check. I get that it's tough.
Other end, and so it's natural. I think it would actually be surprising if you didn't have a pretty wide range of views based, in this kind of highly unusual situation, and we do. So, but we get together, we discuss. we have a great discussion, and then we decide what to do and we act. But you're right, that it's a wide dispersion of views, and I think that's understandable and natural in the current situation.
Hi, Victoria Guida with Politico. You've talked a lot about Fed independence and the importance of it over the years, but as markets have questions about what exactly President Trump's intentions are with the Fed, what would you point to as the things they should be watching to determine that the Fed is still making decisions based on, the economic outlook rather than political considerations?
Look, it's deeply in our culture to do our work based on the incoming data and never consider anything else. That's just
data dependent.
Everybody who's at the Fed really feels strongly about that way. So, you'll know it by the way we talk about what we're doing, by the speeches that people give, by the decisions that we make. You'll know that we're just still going to do that. That's all we do. And we don't frame these questions at all or see them in terms of political outcomes. I think when you get to another part of Washington, everything is seen through the lens of, does it help or hurt this political party, this politician? That's the framework. And I think people find it hard to believe that is not at all the way we think about things at the Fed. We're taking a longer perspective.
But it will be, Jerome. That's the point.
Serve the American people as best we can. So I think you would be able to tell. I don't believe we'll ever get to that place. I would say we're doing our work exactly as we always have now. And people they're making their arguments, and we're having a great discussion around these challenging issues. So,
do you see the court case around Lisa Cook as being related to questions of Fed independence?
I see it as a court case that it would be inappropriate for me to comment on.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. Edward Lawrence.
He's so generous, dude. If I was in his position, I'd be fucking talking shit. But I guess then you'd seem political. So
911,000. The revisions for June were the first negative revisions we've seen since December of 2020. How can the Fed base important decisions on rate and what to do with the interest rates on data that seems to be, as you've called it in the past, noisy?
So on the QCEW, the revision that we saw was almost exactly what we expected. It was amazing how close the expectation was. So, and the reason for that is, for the last bunch of quarters, there's been almost a predictable overcount, and I think the Bureau of Labor Statistics really does understand this, and they're working hard to fix it. It's got to do, of course, it has something to do with low response rates,
model,
but it's also got to do with what's called the birth-death model, because a good amount of job.
I'm predicting what he's going to say. Dude, I swear to God, you can get this stuff. You can get this stuff from my channel, dude. I'm in tune on this shit, bro. I promise you. I've covered the birth-death model. It's live, bro.
Inflation happens around new companies and how many go out of business, how many are founded. And it's just really hard. You can't survey for that. You've got to have a model that predicts that. And it's quite difficult to do, especially when the economy is undergoing big changes. So,
and they're the same age too.
On that and are making progress on it. But
let me get Fed chair, bro. I want to be up there with my market cap hat and my Enron hat.
Well, good enough for us to do our work. To the extent we have issues around data right now, it's about low response rates. That's happened all over really. Response rates are just lower to surveys now, both in and out of the government. And it's no great secret. We want higher response rates, and we need those to have, less volatile data. And
bro, I just got to be real. I'm sorry to pause so many times, but this is all very important. The idea that we still base these judgments on how many jobs there are in America based on surveys from phone calls is crazy. He's saying the response rates have gotten low. Of course, nobody answers the fucking phone anymore. So we're getting like tiny fractions of people that answer the phone and basing the entire jobs numbers off that. It's become comical. The response rates have gotten so low. And I just think it's a joke. I mean, so many other, I'm not trying to I'm getting this data from other people, but people have found out other ways to measure the health of the labor market, and I'm reading them, and they turn out to be more accurate. That's why we're able to call that the job market is bad a year ahead of what they're saying from the BLS, because it's just crazy. We still use that as our main method. I think it's wild.
The way to get that is to make sure that the agencies that collect the data have sufficient resources to drive higher response rates. It's not a complicated problem, but that's what it takes. It's not a mystery. That's what it takes. The other thing I'll say, Edward, is in the case of the job creation, the response rate is quite low for the first month, or lower for the first month. By the time you get to the second or third month, you're still collecting responses for that last month, for that prior month, and you get to the place where the data are much more reliable by the second and certainly the third month. So it's not that we don't get the data, it's just that we get it a little later.
But
yeah, I mean, eventually the revisions catch up with the survey data. But what I want to say is what happened in August is every August they actually get the insurance data, because employers won't answer the phone to tell you how many people they're hiring, but they will claim employee insurance. And so once they get the insurance data, you get the actual picture of how many jobs there were. And that is when they revised it down by 1 million for the past year. Okay. Once you get the hard data, it's like, oh, all those surveys were bullshit. All the birth death model was bullshit. Like, that's what happened recently. So, there's just got to be a better way, bro.
Well, for the benchmarks, if that holds, it's 51% of the jobs that we thought were there weren't really there. Shows a weaker job market coming into this year. If you had had that information, would it have changed your mind related to where the interest rates should be? Should there have been a cut earlier?
You know, we have to live life looking through the windshield rather than the rearview mirror, as you know. And all I can tell you is we see where we are now, and we take appropriate action. And we took that appropriate action today.
That's a bar. That's a bar. I like that. That's a good answer.
Thanks. Howard Schneider with Reuters. So, as you mentioned a minute ago, some margins of the job market would suggest that the slide's already happening. The black unemployment rate in August was above 7%, declining work week, difficulty among college graduates finding work, rising youth unemployment. Why do you think a quarter percentage point now is going to arrest that?
Well, I didn't say that I thought a quarter point would make a huge difference to the economy, but you've got to look at the whole path of rates, right? And the market's has already been baking in expectations. I mean, our market works through expectations, right? So I think our policy path really does matter. And I think it's important that we use our tools to support the labor market when we do see signs like that. I did mention that. You know, you see minorities, unemployment going up. You see younger people who are more vulnerable economically, more susceptible to economic cycles. That's one of the reasons, in addition to just
what, Jerome, though?
Lower.
If young people can't get jobs, they have more time to watch Twitch, which is actually really good for me. So I'm not too worried about this. I think you're on the right track. I don't even think we should cut rates.
I would also point to labor force participation. Some part of the significant decline in labor force participation over the last year has probably been cyclical in nature rather than just the usual aging process. So we put all this together, and we see that the labor market is softening, and we don't need it to soften anymore, don't want it to. So we use our tools, and it starts with a 25 basis point rate cut, but the market's also pricing in a rate path. I'm not blessing what the market's doing at all. I'm just saying it's not just one action.
As a follow-up to that, the growth mix right now seems very concentrated in investment and on the consumer spending side in the higher income groups. Do you feel that that's an unsustainable mix for the economy moving forward?
I wouldn't say that. I mean, you're right. Those are two. We're getting unusually large amounts of economic activity through the AI build out and corporate investment. I don't know how long that will go on. No one does. In terms of spending, you saw that the consumer spending numbers were well above expectations, and that may well be skewed toward higher earning consumers.
It's not may well. It is. Okay. The economy is big companies spending on AI data centers and regular boomers in the top 10% going on vacations and going to restaurants. That is the economy right now. It's not may. It is. That is what it is, and you know it. That's what's happening. Okay. And if either of those two things crack, we're boned.
A lot of anecdotal evidence to suggest that. Nonetheless, it's spending. So, I mean, I think the economy is it's moving along. Economic growth is going to be 1.5 and 1.5%.
Dude, he's depressed. I've never heard him say the economy it's moving along. Dude, he always says it's strong, it's thriving, I think the economy is at its core very healthy. That's crazy. It's moving along is what you say, like, it's like when someone asks you how you're doing and you're like, I'm doing, how's it going? It's going. It's like, oh, you want to kill yourself. Oh, you're fucking openly depressed.
Or better this year, maybe a little better. Forecasts have been coming up, as you can see. So labor market unemployment is low, but downside risks, but it's still a low unemployment rate. So that's how we see it.
Hi, Stephanie Rule, MSNBC. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent has said that the Federal Reserve suffers from mission creep and institutional bloat. He's now calling for an independent review. Would you support an independent review, or are you open to any sort of reform in any areas?
No comment.
I, of course, am not going to comment on anything the Secretary says or really any other officer says. So in terms of reform at the Fed, we just went through a lengthy and I think very successful process of updating our monetary policy framework.
I've watched so many
I
Jerome
would say
Powell.
there's a
I know
lot
how
of
he
work
thinks,
going
bro.
on behind the scenes around the assets we have in the Federal Reserve System and at the board. Are they the right size? We're actually going through a 10% headcount reduction through the whole Fed, including the board and all the reserve banks. The employment at the Fed at the end of that will be basically at the same level it was more than 10 years ago. So we will have had zero job growth for more than a decade.
Jesus.
When we're finished with that, and I think we'll probably do more than that. So I think we're certainly open to constructive criticism and ways to do our jobs better.
But not an independent review?
We're certainly open to to always trying to do better.
Mr. Chairman, Neil Earl with Axios. There's been some debate lately on whether AI
It is
is
great.
already
It does feel like I'm watching fucking LeBron miss a dunk or something. Feels like I'm watching my goat lace up one last time, but he doesn't have the fucking. He just doesn't have the. He's checked out, bro. He's quit.
to affect the labor
I want
market
to give
in
him a
terms of lower
hug.
labor demand, higher productivity by contrast. Do you buy that? And if that is true, does that have implications for the monetary policy setting?
So there's great uncertainty around that. I think my view, which is also a bit of a guess but widely shared, I think, is that you are seeing some effects, but it's not the main thing driving it. And so particular focus on young people coming out of college. And yeah, there may be something there. It may be that companies or other institutions that have been hiring younger people right out of college are able to use AI more than they had in the past. That may be part of the story. It's also part of the story, though, that job creation more broadly has slowed down. The economy has slowed down, and so it's probably a number of things. But yeah, it's probably a factor. Hard to say how big it is.
Okay, I might start speeding up here because.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. What evidence do you see of tariffs showing up in inflation?
Well, if you can take goods, just sort of the broad goods category, and last year, goods inflation was negative. If you go back 25 years, that was the typical thing. Was that goods inflation was goods prices generally went down, even adjusting for quality. So that was not the case during the pandemic, of course. Goods inflation went very high, but we had essentially returned.
Yeah, I mean, just to be clear, during the boomers' lifetimes, over the course of their lifetimes, most things got cheaper. TVs got cheaper, cars got cheaper, things got cheaper as technology improved their lives and you got better and better things. We're not seeing that now. Things are getting more expensive. So it's, it is, yeah, there is a massive difference. And I'd say a huge part of that, of course, is tariffs, which diverts the river of normal progress of things getting cheaper over time, but also just that we're printing a fuck ton of money. We have a massive amount of debt, and then the increase in the money supply is causing inflation in general.
Turn to zero or slightly negative inflation. Now, I think goods inflation over the course of the past year is 1.2%, which doesn't sound like a lot, but it's a big change. So we think, I mean, analysts have different views, but we think it's contributing, 0.3 or 0.4 or something like that to the current core PCE inflation reading, which is 2.9%.
I think it's pretty repetitive.
It's contributing. What seems to be happening is that, the tariffs are mostly not being paid by exporters, mostly being paid by really the companies that sit between the exporter and the consumer. So if you buy something and you sell it through retail or you use it to make a product, you're probably taking a lot of those costs on and not able to pass it fully along to the consumer yet. That appears to be what we're seeing. All of those companies and entities in the middle, they'll tell you that they have every intention of passing that through in time, but they're not doing that now. To the consumer, the pass-through has been pretty small. It's been slower and smaller than we thought. But the evidence is it's very clear that there's some pass-through.
I also wanted to ask if you could share with us.
I mean, I just like Jerome Powell explaining the very basic mechanics of tariffs out loud to the public, which he's done over and over now. It's like, it is paid by American consumers. It will eventually pass through. That we will have it's just not. It's impossible to ignore. It's fucking stupid.
The conditions under which you might consider leaving the Fed.
So China pays it.
In May.
I have nothing new on that for you today.
Hi, Katerina Saraiva with Bloomberg News. I just wanted to follow up on one of your answers just a couple minutes ago. We've often heard you talk about how you and your colleagues, do not think about politics. This does not enter the room.
Yeah.
But one of your new colleagues does come from this world, right, where everything is seen through this framework of politics and of what party is being helped, and that person is still employed by the White House. How can markets and the public interpret, some of his speeches, for example, and then some of, the forecast that we see today? I mean, the median for this year was moved because of the introduction of his forecast. I'm talking about the number of rate cuts seen this year. What do you say to markets and the public that are trying to interpret, what you guys are saying?
So there's 12 vote, 19 participants of whom 12 vote, as you know, on a rotating basis. So no one voter, can really. The only way for any voter to really move things around is to be incredibly persuasive, and the only way to do that in the context in which we work is to make really strong arguments based on the data and one's understanding of the economy. That's really all that matters, and that's how it's going to work. And I think that is the way the institution, that's in the DNA of the institution. That's not going to change.
And then I wanted to ask about a Gallup poll that showed that Americans now have more confidence in the president than the Federal Reserve when it comes to doing what's right for the economy. Why do you think that is, and what's your response? What's your message to the public?
Our response is we're going to do everything we can to use our tools to achieve the goals that Congress has given us, and we're not going to get distracted by anything. So
know how that's
I think that's what we're going to do. We're just going to keep doing our jobs.
I mean, I assume that most Americans don't even know what the fucking Federal Reserve is, straight up. I think if you ask most Americans what the Federal Reserve is or what they do, they have no fucking idea. So that question is like, yeah.
Claire Jones, Financial Times. Given the range of views expressed prior to the meeting, I think there was a lot less dissent today than a lot of people expected. It'd be good to know just what you think the drivers were of coming to that very strong consensus in the meeting, and also on the flip side to just explain why the dot plots are really so scattered between, someone even expecting rates to end up higher by the end of the year to 5 cuts. I mean, what were the kind of range of views you heard about, on one side, why there was so much support for a cut today, and on the flip side, why there's so much divergence about what comes next?
So I think there's quite a wide assessment that the situation has changed with respect to the labor market. Whereas we could still say, and did say in July, at the time of the July meeting, that the labor market was in solid condition, and we could point to 150,000 jobs per month,
which wasn't
and many
real.
other things. I think that the new data that we've had, and it's not just payrolls, it's other things as well, suggests that there really is meaningful downside risk. I said there was downside risk then, but I think that downside risk is now a reality, and there's clearly more downside risk. So I think that's broadly accepted. And so that meant different things for different people. Some wrote down, almost everyone wrote down, supported this cut, and some supported more cuts and some didn't, as you will see from the dot plot. So that's just the way it is. I mean, people have
just the way it is.
You have people who take this work very seriously, think about it all the time, do their work, discuss it with our colleagues. We endlessly discuss this between ourselves, and then we have a meeting where we put it all out on the table, and this is what you get. And you're right, there's a range of views in the dots, and I think that's, like I said, very unsurprising given the quite unusual, historically unusual nature of the challenges that we face. But let's remember, though, the unemployment rate's 4.3%. The economy's growing at 1.5%. So it's not a bad economy or anything like that. We've seen much more challenging economic times. But from a policy standpoint, the standpoint of what we're trying to accomplish, it's challenging to know what to do. There are, as I mentioned earlier, there are no risk-free paths now. It's not incredibly obvious what to do. So we have to keep our eye on inflation. At the same time, we cannot ignore and must keep our eye on maximum employment, those are our two equal goals. And you will see that there are a range of
warming
views
up. He's trying to get back into it.
We came together today at the meeting and acted with a.
You just hit a midi. He's getting loose.
Thank you, Archie Hall from The Economist. You mentioned earlier that job creation was running below your guess at its break-even rate. I'd be curious to hear a bit more about that and where you think the break-even rate is.
So there are many different ways to calculate it, and none of them is perfect. But it's clearly come way down. You could say it's somewhere between 0 and 50,000, and you'd be right or wrong. I mean, there are just many different ways to do it.
Okay.
So wherever it was, 150,000, 200,000 a few months ago, it's come down quite significantly.
But it wasn't
because a very lower amount of people are joining the labor force. The labor force really not growing much at this point, and that's a lot of where the supply of labor was coming from over the last 2 or 3 years. So we're not getting that now. We've got much lower demand. It's interesting that supply and demand have really come down together so far, except now we do have unemployment ticking up outside, just one tick outside.
Powell's your LeBron, who's your
range
Jordan?
where it's been for a year.
Paul Volcker.
4.3% is still a low level, but I think this level of
six rings in
speedy
the 80s,
decline
dude.
in both supply and demand has certainly gotten everyone's attention.
Follow up, if I may. You mentioned the downside risk to employment a fair amount, but it's striking that measures of kind of activity and output for the third quarter, those that we have, seem pretty strong. The Atlanta Fed's GDP now is very strong. You mentioned strong PCE numbers as well. How do you square those things? Is there a chance actually could be upside risk to the labor market if those activity measures are right?
Well, that would be great. We'd love that to happen. So I don't know that you see a big tension there, but it's gratifying to see that economic activity is holding in, and it's a good bit from consumption. It looks like consumption was stronger than expected. What we got earlier this week, I guess. And also we're getting a fairly narrow sector is producing a lot of economic activity, which is the AI build out and business investment. So
yeah.
We watch all of it, and I would say we did move up the median.
Let me give you a theory. Let me just give you a little theory, Jerome Powell. What if this AI build out is not producing the profits needed, so it starts to slow down? At the same time, this consumption spending is primarily fueled by debt. People using credit cards, people buying auto loans, and that starts to slow down as people are unable to pay their loans, BNPL, all that. At which point, whatever was keeping consumption in the economy going collapses, all right? And the risks to the labor market go higher. Let's just posit that theory. That seems more and more likely.
Growth for this year actually moved up in the SEP between the June and September SEPs. So, and really the inflation and labor market didn't change much. It's really the risks that we're seeing to the labor market that were the focus of today's decision.
Nicole. Hi, Nicole Goodkind with Barron's. Thank you for taking my question. Given the cumulative impact of high interest rates on the housing sector, I'm wondering how concerned you are that current rate levels are exacerbating housing affordability issues and potentially hindering household formation and wealth accumulation for a segment of the population?
Housing is an interest-sensitive activity, so it's at the very center of monetary policy. When the pandemic hit and we cut rates to zero, the housing companies were incredibly grateful, and it was really, they said that was the only thing that kept them going, was that we cut so aggressively and provided credit and things like that. And they were.
I'm so glad that we cut rates to zero to help the housing companies keep their prices up. That had long-term benefits for regular people. This is Google Trends history for people Googling help with mortgage, Jerome Powell. It has not been this high since 2008.
To finance because we did that. The other side of that is when inflation gets high and we raise rates, and you're right, it does burden the housing industry, and so rates have come down a bit, and as that happens, we don't set...
We got a fire movie called The Big Short, actually, so maybe it's worth it.
We don't set mortgage rates, but our policy rate changes do tend to affect mortgage rates, and that has been happening, and that'll of course raise demand. Lower borrowing rates for builders will help, get builders will help supply. And so some of that should happen. I think most analysts think that it would have to be pretty big changes for it to matter a lot big changes in rates for it to matter a lot for the housing sector. And the other thing is by achieving maximum employment and price stability, that's a strong economy. That's a good economy for housing. And then the last thing I'll say is, there's a deeper problem here. There's not a cyclical problem that the Fed can address, and that just is a pretty much nationwide housing shortage. Or a lot of places in the country just don't have enough housing for people, and all of the areas around metropolitan areas like Washington, for example, are very built up, and so you're having to build farther and farther out, and so that's where it is.
And just a quick follow-up. During the last SEP, or the press conference following the last SEP, you seemed to indicate that policymakers lacked conviction about their projections, and I'm wondering if you still feel that way.
Forecasting is very difficult even in placid times, and as I've mentioned before, forecasters are a humble lot with much to be humble about. So I think right now is a particularly challenging time, even more uncertain than usual. And so I don't know any forecaster anywhere, really. Ask any of the forecasters whether they have great confidence in their forecast right now. I think they'll honestly say no.
Thank you, Chair Powell. Jennifer Schonberger with Yahoo Finance. If you're cutting rates, why continue to reduce the size of your balance sheet, then pause the unwinding?
Well, I think we're cutting the size of our balance sheet quite marginally now. As you know, with the balance sheet, we're still in an abundant reserves condition, and we've said that we would stop somewhat above somewhat above an ample reserves level. That's where we are, and we're getting closer to that. We're monitoring it very carefully. We don't think that has at all significant macroeconomic effects. These are pretty small numbers moving around inside a giant economy. The level of runoff is not very large, so I wouldn't attribute macroeconomic consequences to that at this point.
It is very small.
And at his recent confirmation hearing, Stephen Myron brought up that the Fed actually has 3 mandates from Congress, not just jobs and stable prices, but also moderate long-term interest rates. So what does Congress mean by moderate long-term interest rates? How should we understand that when we see the 10-year Treasury moving? And how do you think about this part of the mandate when policy choices like rate cuts or balance sheet reductions affect the long end of the yield curve?
Don't add a third one.
So we always think of it as the dual mandate, maximum employment and price stability, for a long time, because we think moderate long-term interest rates are something that will result from stable inflation, low and stable inflation, and maximum employment. So we haven't thought about that for a very long time as a third mandate that requires independent action. So that's where that is. And there's no thought that, as far as I'm concerned, there's no.
Man, part of me believes that if we just imagine this whole time, what if it was just at 3%? What if they just done nothing instead of cranking it down to 0, ratcheting it up, going down, ratcheting it up, going down, right? What if they had just kept it at 3 and the fucking economy adjusts around that? I know it's a little simplified, but man, it's it feels like they're always behind the curve trying to fix the problem, and then
thought of considering that.
That's boring, bro.
Considering that we somehow incorporate that in as something in a different way.
Thanks, Chair Powell. Matt Egan from CNN. We recently learned that average FICO credit scores are down this year by 2 points, the most since 2009 during the Great Recession, and delinquencies are high for car loans, personal loans, credit cards. How concerned, if at all, are you about the health of consumer finances, and do you expect today's cut will help?
Good question.
So, we're aware of that. I think default rates have been kind of ticking up, and we do watch that. They're not at a level. I don't believe they're at a level where overall they're terribly concerning, but it is something that we
I
watch.
can't wait to talk
lower
about
rates
this.
should support economic
Okay,
activity.
I got a video about default rates coming out soon and how I have strong evidence that they are higher than the rate would suggest. And I think we can back it up, and I think we can show why. And I'm very excited to talk about it. That's coming up soon.
I don't know that one rate cut will have visible effect on that, but over time, a strong economy with a strong labor market is what we're aiming for, and stable prices. So that should help.
Just to follow up, this rate cut is coming at a time when the stock market is at or near all-time highs, and some valuation metrics are elevated historically. Is there a risk that cutting rates could overheat financial markets, potentially fueling a bubble?
We're tightly focused on our goals, right? And our goals are maximum employment and price stability. And
oh, really?
So we take the actions that we take with an eye on those goals. Separately, and that's why we did what we did today. Separately, we monitor financial stability very, very carefully. And I would say it's a mixed picture, but households are in good shape, banks are in good shape. Overall, households are still in good shape in the aggregate. And I know that people at the lower end of the income spectrum are under pressure, obviously. But from a financial stability perspective, we monitor that picture. We don't have a view that there's a right or wrong level of asset prices for any particular financial asset, but we monitor the whole picture, really looking for structural vulnerabilities. And I would say those are not elevated right now.
Jean, we'll go to you for the last question.
Hi, Chair Powell. Jean Young with M&I Market News. I wanted to ask about inflation expectations. You've said the Fed can't take the stability of inflation expectations for granted. You mentioned at the short run,
really hard job.
gone
It
up
is.
a little bit. I
It
wonder if
is.
you can talk
I'm not
a
blaming
bit
him.
about that. And then also at the long run, wondering, do you see evidence that the debate over Fed independence and the growing deficit is putting pressure on inflation expectations?
Oh, stop asking.
So as you said, shorter-term inflation expectations have tended to respond to near-term inflation. So if inflation goes up, inflation expectations will predict that it takes
Do you
just
think
a
his
little while
job
to
is
get back
hard
down.
as Twitch him or
Fortunately,
no?
Throughout this period, longer-term inflation
His job's
expectations,
hard,
both-
but it's
both
not
breaking
as
even in the
hard as
markets,
being a
and
Twitch
almost all
streamer,
of the longer-term
obviously.
surveys.
That's the hardest
Michigan
job in
being
the
a bit of an
world.
outlier lately.
If Jerome Powell
have been
woke up
just
with
rock
my
solid
job, he'd
in
kill
terms
himself.
Of,
from the difficulty.
running at levels that are consistent with 2% inflation over time. So we don't take that for granted. We actually assume that our actions have a real effect on that, and that we need to continually show and also discuss our commitment to 2% inflation. And so you'll hear us doing that. But we're, as I mentioned, it's a difficult situation because we have risks that are both affecting the labor market and inflation. Those are our two goals, and so we have to balance those two. When they're both at risk, we have to balance them, and that's really what we're trying to do. I don't. Your latter part of your question was about independence. I don't see market participants. I don't see that that's something they're factoring in right now in terms of setting interest rates. Thanks very much.
Okay. He's done. A sad display, but the old goat laced up one last time to get out there. He's actually got a few more before 2026. They do 8 of these a year. There's one in December, and then there's going to be probably one more before I think he's got 2 or 3 left. I got respect for Jerome Powell. He's got a very tough job. He has the president and the power of the president bearing down on him. A lot of political pressure, a lot of legal pressure. The economy's cracking from both angles. I know that I'm yelling at him in this meeting, but I don't personally blame him as a human being. However, boy, howdy, if you are listening to this and you're thinking, oh, it's fine, he said the economy's strong, trust your gut. That is not true. And by the way, just go back and listen to the very last meeting and watch the change in tone from then to now. It's clearly deteriorating. It's clearly. Now, he's not trying to panic everybody, but man, it's like, it's very, very obvious that the risks to both inflation and the job market are getting worse. Will you continue stream? No, I have a friend that I'm going to hang out with, and then I have a meeting. I have a meeting with a lawyer, actually, at 2. And the lawyer is Oh, damn, you good? Yeah, we're good. It's for Lemonade Stand. I'm suing my co-host to get sole custody of Lemonade Stand profits. Okay? And it's Who Dat. I've hired Who Dat. No. We might be signing a deal for Lemonade Stand, and we have to meet with a lawyer to figure it all out. That's exactly what's happening. I can't tell you more because we haven't signed the deal. Hey, Atrioc, I just want to pop in and say that me and my boyfriend really enjoy your content on YouTube. Greetings from Slovenia. You're Luka Doncic's girlfriend? The Doncic family is watching me? Lovely Clouds, that's awesome. Tell Luka I'm a big fan as well. I can tell, obviously, we're both fans, and we should meet up. Anyway, thank you for the nice message. I'd love to visit Slovenia someday. There's a lot of countries I would like to one day visit. I actually work with him on a few events? Holy shit. That's crazy. That's badass, dude. Tell him to train with me. I think he wants to work out with another up and coming basketball star, and it's like me and him could really get it good going. What do you think the K-shaped economy will be with the millennials poised for inheritance? So I've heard a couple theories on this. One of which is that millennials will get mega rich from all their boomer parent inheritance. Okay? Because millennials are the generation with boomer parents. Boomers have all the money. They're going to die. That's one theory. The second theory is that a vast, vast majority of those funds, outside of the very wealthiest, are going to get sucked up by private equity nursing homes. That so much of the money is going to go to expensive elder care at the end of their lives. So that plus some estate taxes, and there's not going to be much left over. So I'm not 100% certain how much is actually going to trickle down to the next gen. I'd have to research it more, to be honest. I've only heard these two theories, but not look too quickly into it. Sweden visit? I just finished it. I just visited Sweden. I did a Denmark trip, and then we did the train over to Sweden. The Central Bank of Norway is revealing new rates tomorrow. Predictions? Doesn't matter. I don't give a fuck. I don't give a fuck about Norway's central bank rates, bro. It's chump change. It doesn't. Bro, I'm not even going to watch. It'll affect nobody outside of fucking Norway, I guess, even. Bro, the ECB, European Central Bank, and Canada Central Bank have been cutting like crazy. It hasn't done shit for them. Bro, most Norwegians, their retirement is in American stocks. The Norwegian Sovereign Wealth Fund is like the largest owner of American stocks. Is that they're not even, that's what they're watching, bro. They're not watching. The biggest company in Norway is an energy company. The next biggest is like 1/10 the size. And they sell fish or something. Norway has a very healthy country. They have a lot of happiness. They have a stable society. But, they don't have any major big companies. They don't have, it's all oil. It's Isn't Ozempic from there? No, it's from Denmark. Novo Nordisk is a Danish company, not a Norwegian company. Although if we are American, you are justified in saying, what's the difference? Because you don't need to know. Chat, thanks for watching. I am going to end. Appreciate you joining me for this. Wow, we hit 7,500 subs. Jesus Christ. Thank you for the subs. I appreciate it. It's always fun for me to watch these. I know it sounds like it's not fun for me, but it actually is. I used to watch these all the time and only recently started streaming them, and it's fun that people actually join me. I never thought. For probably 2 years, I watched these and didn't stream them because I figured no one would find it interesting. But actually, people do show up and they do enjoy it, and it's always surprising to me. Especially young people, they care about watching the fucking FOMC. So To me, it's fascinating. I think it's cool people are interested in this stuff. I think it's cool people care about what's going on in the world outside of their own bubble and what's going on in the economy. And I think it's great. I think it's very, very positive. It's a positive sign that people care. Thank you for watching. I will see you possibly tonight for some Silk Song and maybe a presentation, maybe. But I do have a friend that I want to hang out with, and this legal meeting. So it's kind of a TBD. I may not be live tonight, but I will be live tomorrow, and we're going to do album review and everything else. So thank you. PogChamp, who's live? We'll raid somebody. We'll pass the love along. Is Stans live? I'd love to raid Stans. I love my guy Stans. If not, we'll probably raid, I don't know, Hera or Linkus or... dude, I watched Slime. I'm not going to raid Slime because he might be in a bad mood playing League. But I watched Slime play League of Legends. It was the funniest fucking thing. It was before the minion spawned. He was ranting at the screen that all of his teammates were sister fuckers. They're all sister fuckers. They all fuck their sisters. And he's like, I'm going to lose this race to Nick. I'm going to lose and nobody's going to believe me that I'm actually good and it's just my fucking sister fucking teammates. And then, right as he said that, he looks at camera and his Lux runs into the other team and dies before minions spawn. It was the most perfect timing, and he put his head in his hands, and I was crying. The timing was so perfect. What's Nick's name? We'll raid Nick. Fuck it. That'd be fun. We'll raid Nick. It's Falco? Just Falco? All right, we'll raid Falco. Is he even live? Twitch.tv/Falco. He is live. Okay. Yeah. Give Nick some love. He's on a race with Slime to get to gold. All right, guys. Thanks for watching. Goodbye.